Hello, I'm TJ Maher. With this talk, I'll be giving a few pointers on how software testers can improve working with the developers. I've been testing software since 1996, since corporations first discovered the web. Unsure how I wanted to apply my computer science degree, I left college for a bit to get some more work experience. Let me tell you, I fell in love with software testing immediately, examining not just the product, but also how teams worked together and communicated with each other while constructing this software product that we were all building. Back then, in the mid to late 1990s, the software development process looked a bit different. To craft the smaller web applications we were building, we still were using the same development methods that were used to create large-scale projects. Committees of business analysts would draft a list of requirements, which then would be passed to a committee of designers after sign-off. Then came the developers, then came the testers, with the release date looming over everyone's head. Every stage was compartmentalized. Developers sat with developers. Testers, they sat with testers. Everything was regimented, each to its own section. Did you find a possible bug? You were instructed not to walk over to the developers and demo it to them. Instead, you were told simply to file a bug report. Back then, you had two goals: find bugs and don't bother the developers. I'm really glad to be past that stage. But this brings me to my first point of this talk when working with the developers. It can be tough being a software tester. In the software industry, sometimes software developers can be seen as the stars, the crafters. Testers seen more as a supporting role. Me, I'm fine with this. That's why I chose this profession. I see myself as an end-user advocate, trying to generate a mental model of the customer base that's actually using the product, comparing that through all the stages of the software development lifecycle, testing against this model that I've created. But you see, there's been many a time in my career when it seemed that only testers can see their own value. In my career, I've been blamed for finding too many bugs, for daring to report all these bugs, for making the team look bad, for making the product look bad. I've had managers foster an us versus them mentality between devs and testers, claiming that this heated rivalry kept both camps on their toes. I remember that was a fun contract. I've had dev managers dismiss me as only a tester. None of these examples have happened recently, though. These incidences, they happened early in my career. But on bad days or times of severe stress, bad experiences like this can bubble up in my mind. Oh, and the longer your career goes on in this field, the more the baggage that can accrue. It's important that these past bad experiences do not interfere when you meet present or future developers on your teams. Try to vent with a friend outside of work if you need to, unpack your baggage, trade war stories, join a networking group of other testers, or find some way to deal with these past comments that may still haunt you. Do whatever it takes, so the next time you start working with developers, you can do so with a clear mind. This brings me to my next point. Develop a good working relationship with the developer. Lucky for me, the life of a tester greatly improved with Agile. Testers became full-fledged members of the development team, working side by side with developers, analyzing each of the product features. We didn't have to fight for our voice to be heard. When the new feature of the product was being planned, we had a seat at the table. Testers are now there, in the room, as the 2-week sprint is being sketched out and reviewed. They are not just bystanders or spectators. Testers are active participants. As the product owner is introducing a new feature to the team before the sprint starts, testers and developers are working side by side, brainstorming and reviewing each other's feature story by story. They are both working together to see if the requirements are readable, understandable, clear, and concise. As the developer is trying to hash out if there's enough information there to build the thing, the tester is trying to figure out if there's enough metrics listed to test the darned thing. Is this feature testable? How do you know the feature passes? What does a failure look like? How can you tell a pass from a fail? What is a requirement? What is simply nice to have? What inputs are acceptable? What is not acceptable? The tester needs to think about all of these items. If the feature has a UI segment, are there sample screenshots of how the product is supposed to look and behave? Without everything spelled out, you aren't going to be able to tell if everything is working as it should or not. Next, developers and testers try to work out during the review how complex a story may be, comparing one story to another, assigning various points to the story. Trying to assign story points, attempting to decide as a team if a story is 1, 2, 3, 5, or 8, or 13, it spurs a healthy and constructive debate, and the testers are right there in the thick of this debate, listening, taking everything in, and contributing to this conversation. There are some features where there doesn't need to be extra time added to test a feature. Sometimes those features either works or it doesn't. Either the correct output is shown or it fails. Sometimes, though, testing the feature will add a great deal of complexity to the story. Let's say you need to test a UI feature and the app you're creating needs to look similar across all web and mobile platforms such as Chrome, Firefox, MS Edge, IE 11, and Safari for the Mac. Or say it needs to be responsive to various page widths, such as those found on a mobile phone, tablet, and a desktop computer. Oh, you'd better believe that all of this will add to the complexity to the story. If you don't speak up and say that you need to budget more time into developing and testing this feature, you're going to find yourself either blowing deadlines or working a lot of nights and weekends in your immediate future. Remember, with Agile, you're trying to run at a healthy sprint. It's not supposed to be a death march. My favorite part of every sprint? The sprint retrospective. I love the fun Agile games designed to have everyone make their individual voice heard, to spur discussion along, to analyze as a team what worked and what didn't, and figure out how to make things better the next sprint. You see, if you pile a lot of introverts into a room and there's only one forceful personality speaking out, the rest of the room might muffle themselves to keep the peace, going along just to get along. But if you have a Scrum Master leading a group discussion using quirky Agile games, it changes the group dynamics. My favorite game, the Scrum Master draws a boat on the whiteboard, representing the past sprint. What was the wind that blew the boat forward? What were the anchors that dragged it down? All teammates write their thoughts on post-it notes and place them on the whiteboard, starting this group discussion. Another one I love is Mad, Sad, and Glad. What during the sprint made you mad? What made you sad? What made you glad? What usually makes me sad? When the sprint turns out to be a 2-week waterfall. Testers get all the tickets delivered to them, testing at the very last minute. What makes me glad is when developers take a look at what they need to do and sort the tickets so a new ticket can be delivered to the testers every couple of days during a sprint at a steady pace. We testers, we get to work side by side with these developers. Since you're working side by side with the developers, it would help if you developed a good working relationship with them. But what is a good working relationship? An example I love using to illustrate what I mean by a good working relationship with a developer. The relationship between developers and testers shouldn't be one of an artist and an art critic. Rather, it should be one of a writer and a copy editor, both applying their skill set to make a quality product. Let me say this again. The relationship between developers and testers shouldn't be one of artist and art critic. Rather, it should be one of writer and copy editor, both applying their skill set to make a quality product. This isn't just a belief of mine. It's a mantra. I use this to try to get in the right mindset when working with developers, not only when things are going well, but when things are going poorly. To me, this is the ideal. Developers and testers working with each other, learning from each other. If things are not this way in the workplace, I want, as an employee, to get it to this way. This is more than just grabbing lunch with the devs you're working with to build and test the feature. Although that does help to get to know the developer as not just a coworker, but also as a person. This is also about my next point. Start working with developers before the testing starts. Is there a new feature being developed? Are you and the tester assigned to it? Are you both unsure how it will work? Are you unfamiliar with the area the feature will be attached to? There is one person who is just as worried and nervous as you are, and that's the developer assigned to create this feature. You see, in order to make sure developers don't get siloed, things get switched up every couple of sprints, which means that you have a new developer who may be just as confused as you are about how this is supposed to work. How does data get from the UI to the API to the database? Are there new fields that need to be created? Does data need to be processed before it gets used? Is the code being held together with paper clips, rubber bands, and duct tape? Is there a risk that things related to this feature might break as things are being built or code is being cleaned up and refactored? These concerns need to be addressed by both developer and tester. Work with the developer. Be their sounding board. The developer is focused on drafting and building the product. My main focus as a tester is how a customer will operate the product. The developer's focus is creating the product according to the ever-changing specifications. My focus is to do risk analysis as the product is being constantly changed and updated. To me, developers aren't opponents. We're teammates. We're partners. This brings me to the next point. Enjoy each other's perspectives. By getting to know each other, and by bouncing ideas off of each other as we analyze the product together, we're starting to build a good foundation on which the product will rest. If a developer is being ramped up on the project, I am there too. At this stage, I'm not testing the code. I'm testing assumptions that are being made about the product. Do we really know who's going to be using this product? What browsers do we say we support? Go to the logs. What do the logs say? What browsers and platforms are our customers truly using? See, if you can set up pair testing with the developer, you would get to know more about how the product is being built, and the developer would get more exposure on how to test this creation you are both shaping. As a tester, recognize that you may have a completely different perspective than the developer. Developers see the product from the bottom up. Testers see the product from the top down. To a developer, the UI might seem like a thin plastic veneer covering the machinery of the product. But to a tester, who is more user-centric focused, that UI is the end-all and be-all. By sharing each other's unique perspective, you can help each other get better in your own profession. There's been a trend in software development that started back in the birth of Agile, but only seems to be picking up speed in the past few years. And I'm talking about unit testing. Developers, before they even write a lot of code that they need to figure out how to test it. What are the boundary conditions of the unit of code they are building? What are some of the positive tests? What are some of the negative tests? This is called test-driven development. And from what I've heard from the developers I've been working with, it is hard. Writing unit tests, then integration tests that check that things working together is a completely different mindset for them. But I found as they struggle with this, they appreciate us testers more. Talking with them about testing, helping them out, this all fosters a good working relationship, which I'm trying to achieve. This is important, especially for my last point. Under times of stress, try to be kind. It's very easy to get stressed out in the software industry. Deadlines are always looming. Things move so fast. There's always a new tool or technology to learn every few years. Requirements can change quicker than you can keep up. Things can fall apart. It's easy to get overwhelmed, stressed out. These stressful times are why we've done all this work. It's for these stressful moments. If you are feeling the stress, the developer is too. You see, like Alice in Wonderland, developers are running the Red Queen's race. They're running as fast as they can, just to stay in the same place. Tech stacks, they change constantly. Front-end developers, for instance, they had to suddenly become experts in JavaScript, then Angular, then Ember, then React.js or Vue.js, and whatever JavaScript framework Google, Amazon, or Facebook are pushing next year. When you find bugs in the developer's work, try to be kind. Don't act as if the bug represents a failing of their work ethic. Try not to come across as smug or lord the bug over the developer. They're trying to do so much with so little time, it's easy for things to get missed. Also, the bug you found might not be a bug at all. It may be a feature. Yeah, I know. We've all heard that joke. It's not a bug, it's a feature. But I've seen some cases where that is actually true. The requirements might have changed, and a conversation or midnight email might have happened between the product owner and the developer that you're not privy to. The developer might have realized that the product doesn't have the structure to support all of the new requirements, and things got scaled back a bit. Or maybe a bug was already found, and the designer, developer, and product owner had a meeting just for brainstorming, and they decided they could live with the bug, and they haven't had time to communicate that to you just yet. That's software development for you. It's a field we all know and love, most of the time. Okay, before we wrap this up, let's go over the guidelines we covered in this talk. When working with developers, it helps not to let previous bad experiences you've had get in the way of making good working relationships. It's nice to develop a good working relationship with the developer. You can do this by starting to work with the developer before the testing starts. You can learn to enjoy each other's perspectives. And also, under times of stress, try to be kind. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this talk as much as I did preparing it. If you are in the Boston area, I invite you to join the meetup I run, the Ministry of Testing Boston. It's part social group, part networking group. It's where testers can gather and help each other out. I have a software testing blog, Adventures in Automation, at tjmaher.com. That's tjmaher.com. If you want to chat, the best way to contact me is at Twitter. I am tjmaher1. That's tjmaher1. And I am always online. See you around, and happy testing. Thank you very much.